There are just a couple of salient points that I am going to expand on. If the likes of Brett and Russell would be so kind as to come across here, if we could just ask Brett in terms of senior executive, senior buy-in, that must have been pretty critical to the success of the project. Could you just share some of those challenges with us?
Thank you, Carol. Yes, as you mentioned, executive buy-in for me is one of the most critical success factors because, as I said before, I mean, it's very much the tone at the top that makes the difference. Leadership has to, firstly, embrace the cultural change that is required for an agile approach, because, as I always say, people watch what you do. They don't listen to what you say, they watch what you do. So I was conscious that all of us as an executive team had to show in our behavior and our setting of priorities and direction that we embraced the agile approach, that we were therefore responsive to changes along the way, that an amendment to the project plan was not a failure, it was a necessary response to a market opportunity, if you like. And also, I think the other reason why executive buy-in is critically important is because executives set strategic priorities. You know, we get to decide what goes first, what's the most important, what gets budget, what gets communicated, you know, what takes priority in implementation. So if you don't have executive buy-in at all of those levels, you're really not going to have a huge success in your project.
Thanks, Brett. The powers of persuasion, I see you even got them all on agile training. I think that's fairly significant. The old with the new, Russell. How easy is that to manage the old and at the same time be innovative and try and see and get to a vision that maybe you don't really know?
I think what made the key difference in terms of the co-source model that we did with EOH is in essence from a project or from a resourcing perspective on the IT side, we essentially we went through a recruitment phase. So we were fortunate to some degree that we could leave old IT ops running to look after Merlin, and we didn't have to essentially transform the existing resources we had within the project. The challenge obviously came though that at a certain point within the project itself, we came across some ownership issues, for example, because a lot of the old IT team would perceive that this is an EOH or bank IT development project. So about 2 years into the project, we had to start transitioning old IT into the project, so there was ownership of the project. And I think at this point, from about 6 or 7 months ago, we've successfully done that, and that's key. That you can't run a standalone project and not think about the integration prior to the end of the project to do the integration. And I think we've done a good job. We've still got a couple of guys running on the fringes, and they're looking after the old systems. But I think once we go live, I think the balance of the team will in essence move over. But for us, this is a huge project. I won't tell you how big our IT department is because I'm sure some people will laugh in context to theirs, but in essence, it's consumed half of our existing IT department from the old guys call it, or the old team, so that's put a lot of strain on us to keep the existing environments and the systems up, because as we try to develop new requirements within a software development product that hasn't launched, there's a lot of pressure from a business imperative to actually maybe try and sneak something into the old system, but then everybody forgets I've got to develop it into the new system. And you're in constant sort of tug of war with the business.
Yeah, if I can speak a little bit around that, I mean, for me, that's probably been one of the most difficult balancing acts in the project. Because as Russell says, I mean, while the approach is agile, we do have to get to an endpoint for the implementation of the first phase. It is a journey, and we will never end, but we do have to deliver the first phase. But meantime, back at the ranch, business, in response to the rapidly changing landscape around them and competitor activity and all of those good things, is coming up with stuff that they need yesterday. And as Russell says, we have a small IT team. There's only so much that they can do. As I always say, you have one head and one pair of hands, and there are only 24 hours in a day. So against that backdrop, it's very much a case of making strategic choices, choosing what you are going to do, what you're not going to do, what can wait, what can't wait. And that has been a really challenging juggling act. I mean, I hope that we've got it right most of the time, but certainly balancing the egos and the business priorities that go with that has been interesting.
Well, I think it's admirable that you're already on this journey. I think, Peter, tooling culture, nobody's really spoken much about tooling. Any of you three at the end, but especially to Peter at this stage, tooling?
So I'll hand out to the tooling expert now, but just in the context of the project, yes, in presenting the case study, we didn't talk a lot about tooling. That does not mean it didn't happen. It doesn't mean it's critically important. You cannot prepare yourself for a DevOps world and if you don't automate a lot of things. And for that, you need tooling. So while we did a lot of tooling, we chose, because I'm from the Microsoft side of EOH, we chose the Microsoft tooling, and we implemented a lot of that. The coded UI tests, the automated unit tests, the continuous integration, the release management, the source control, the workflow tracking, all of that. The team, in everything that they do, they implemented these things. But the focus for us is that tooling doesn't solve the problem. You cannot just put tools in place and think it solves it. It needs to be a balance between the three, making sure you have the right people on the team, and sometimes the wrong people need to go. Sometimes people are not ready for this type of work, and then you find something else for them. So between people, process, and tooling, all three are critically important. But yes, you cannot do this without tools. But Jaco can tell you more about that.
Yeah, I mean, just to echo what Peter has said now as well. Tooling does solve a lot of your automation problems, but ultimately, if you don't have executive buy-in, as we heard as well this morning, then you just set up yourself for failure, because you can have the best tools in the market, but if you don't have an executive sponsor that can actually drive that cultural change and behavioral change in your organization, that's only going to stay in one small area of your business, and maybe that could fizzle out over time as well. But that also being said, a lot of times we see customers almost going into this whole analysis paralysis phase where they're too scared to start, right? It's like, oh, what should I do? And I'm scared to take the first step, because what if it's the wrong step? And I think, as Lionel also suggested in his presentation, don't shoot the messenger. It is a journey that you're on. You are going to make mistakes along the way. The idea is that you learn from those mistakes and you take it forward. So really, it is about starting somewhere in your organization, picking an area where there's high visibility, with low risk, that you can then drive and sort of create this poster child of what this could look like for the rest of the organization, and then to roll that out and gradually deploy that to the rest of the organization.
Thank you, Jaco. There does seem to be a sense of nervousness for people to embark on these projects. Would it be a naive statement to suggest that South Africa is not competitive enough, is not seeing this trend as critical enough? Lionel?
Well, I don't know. With collusion and everything in the news, I don't know. Are we all just part of one happy club and we make sure that we don't mess around each other too much? I don't think so. And I'm not seeing this in the financial services industry. There's an enormous amount of pressure that is occurring. And even though organizations may only be starting to put a bit of a sort of like a digital sauce, or maybe the digital icing into their organizations, as this progresses and it speeds up, there's going to be a tremendous amount of competition. So in some of the financial organizations which I'm in consulting to, some pretty huge programs are going to come off in the next year or two, where they are retooling their core infrastructure and moving to platform as a service internally in the organization. And that is going to be, the ones that get there first are going to be able to speed up tremendously their ability to deliver. So I'm really interested in the space in the next 2-3 years to see which one of these players is going to win this game, and really start grinding the competition. But this is also a difficult space because in many of these organizations, the folks that are building these new platforms, they're not the people that are supposed to be apparently building these new platforms. So there's a lot of tension in these organizations about, you know, some businessy department or some technology bunch somewhere who are able to slap together these new technologies and tools, and you can do it quite quickly these days if you start greenfield. So, you know, so if you get a big project in these organizations with a couple of $100 million budget, they don't only develop the software, they even create the new platforms because of the new tooling. And they can do so very quickly. And this causes a bit of animosity in these organizations between the folks that are supposed to look after platforms and the folks that now start looking after platforms. So yes, tools definitely help and speed up, but there's quite a lot of things going on that leaders need to get right to make sure that this transition between the sort of old and the new and who's doing what, and that everyone is looked after in the process.
Thank you, Lionel. I think if I could
Caroline,
ask...
if I can, sorry, if
Sure.
can add to that. What Lionel said now triggered something that I heard in a presentation as well, which I found very, very insightful is, and if you're from a software development background, then you know in your world you're the most important person that exists and you work the hardest that anybody works, and everybody around you is lazy and not doing enough, and you start to develop this megalomaniac attitude. And what we've seen is while a lot of development houses or development departments say they do DevOps, they actually move more towards a DevNoOps. And the cloud movement has allowed us to do that. It has allowed us for the developers to start provisioning their own equipment, to ignore the operations department and not worry about them, and just because they delay us, you know, they're a problem to us. That whole animosity between the two departments, and if your developers have that mindset, then you have a problem, and that's part of the journey. Is maybe they need to go through that. To realize, but they do need these guys. They do need each other. So avoid the DevNoOps world. It's there, it's real, and it's very prevalent. But DevOps is something different. DevOps is really working together. The operations people being part of the project teams and the project teams being part of operations, and putting everything in place so that things happen more quickly. And some organizations have a target to do 10 production releases a day. Now, that's a good vision to have, because it's damn scary that you think that things need to go into production 10 times a day. But if you have everything in place, and there are success stories of people that have achieved this, then that makes it clear that something needs to be very different in how you operate to achieve that.
Yeah, just to add to that as well. You heard this morning at the keynote about the CEO of ING Bank. To give you an idea, they do in excess of 30,000 deployments in a month. That's 1 month. So again, they've been on this continuous delivery journey also for a while. But I think also what's key is, as Peter just said, around the DevOps culture, it's great if the developers and the testers and the ops guys are coming together, but we need business as well. You know, and a lot of organizations where we go into, the business is nowhere to be seen. They are not in these conversations today. And that needs to drastically change as well if we're going to see successes in this area.
Thank you, Jaco. I think it's apparent that this is a fairly complex journey. And I guess if I can bring it back to the beginning, Brett or Russell, where does one start?
I think for me, Carol, the most important thing is to take the decision to start. Because as somebody said earlier, you can spend forever in analysis paralysis. And I mean, in fact, if I can share our story, and Russell will bear me out, it probably took us 10 years to make the decision to change our Merlin, which is our kind of retail front end, in very layman speak. Because I think, I mean, as business people, and I speak with a business hat on, I mean, it's fear of the unknown. You know, you've got something, and Merlin is a case in point. Merlin was and is completely solid. It works. It's completely stable. It doesn't give problems. But what it doesn't do easily is to permit rapid change and innovation, which is what was becoming increasingly critical in the banking business in which we operate to remain remotely competitive. And eventually, I think that, more than anything, sparked the decision to say, well, it has to be today. Because, I mean, I alluded earlier to Tennis, our fearless FD, saying, you know, if you do this, you do understand that you're going to have to increase your top line by 20 or 25%. But I said, I don't know if I can do that, but what I can promise is that if we don't do this, our top line's going to shrink by 20% over I don't know what period, but it's getting shorter by the minute. So it is a case at some point of feeling the fear and doing it anyway.
Sure.
I think just from our perspective on the IT side, so as Brett mentioned as well, so typically there was always a lot of sort of reliance placed on IT to come up with systems and development and control that sort of whole environment. I think a key change that happened for us, and this actually happened during the course of the project, is actually getting, I know we always talk about those cliched words like business ownership and things like that, but now with having actual product owners who are actually responsible for a deliverable within a project, say for instance an enhancement. So what we've gone and done is we've taken EVO, this project that we're running, this agile project, and we've split it up into different work streams. There's 5 different work streams, and each of these work streams, instead of them having a fixed price or a fixed term, we've essentially gone and we've gotten approval for a budgetary amount on a fiscal year. So that product owner who is responsible for that particular product, that portion of the system, has direct accountability to the Exco now, instead of IT having accountability. And that's been a huge change, I think, for us on the IT side, where it's taken a lot of pressure off us to sort of justify why we are doing things and not delivering. Because as soon as you have business involvement and you have engagement, all of a sudden you have a product owner or a business owner who's on your side for a change at an Exco. And also they have to explain away why they are spending X amount of rands to develop a certain part of the system. And I think that's been quite a key change for us since we implemented that change late last year.
And Russell, I think that speaks to a significant shift in the fact that now IT and business is one. I think in the old days it was too easy to blame IT if things didn't work. Business ownership just takes it to a different level. So I really do believe this is a complex journey. I think it's admirable that the likes of Bidvest Bank have embarked on this. I think what is very apparent is it spans people, process, technology. It spans the different hierarchies in an organization. Well, so much so that I think the organizations, the hierarchy of old, need to go. We need to move from that pathological organization to a more generative one, where failures are almost rewarded. And I think it's a fascinating journey for all of us. It's who actually has the gumption to take it on. I do just want to ask either Russell or Brett in closing, partnerships. I would imagine that's a pretty key thing to the success.
Yeah, I'll make comments on that. Yes, it was. So, as Brett mentioned earlier, we actually wrote Merlin in-house as well, with no methodology or framework. We wrote it in-house in Emmerich about 15, 16 years ago. And and it's a rock-solid system, and it's still running in the bank today. But we embarked upon a journey a long time ago to basically seek its replacement. And we went through that whole kind of agile process of let's try and buy something off the shelf, let's not customize. And the last thing on the list is to do a dev ourselves. So we didn't want to do it, but unfortunately, just in terms of the way our bank operates, we believed that a software development was going to be sort of the best way to do it. So we also went through a period in terms of doing vendor selection. EOH was obviously part of it. There were a couple of other parties, but I think one of the reasons why EOH stood out for us, other than their sort of core competency around development and methodologies, was their ability, either through acquisition or just in terms of their alliances. They had a key partner in there. At the time, it was called Free Thinking. So a lot of these software development houses will come in and tell you that they can provide a functional lead or they can provide analysis type guys. And as part of the transformation of the bank is instead of us being known as just a traditional foreign exchange bank in the travel space, we wanted to transform the bank to be a more transactional type bank or be more generic on the back end. And from a presentation and a proposal perspective, the Free Thinking sort of alliance stood out for us because they brought in individuals who had worked at the other financial institutions, guys that had been on the bench, guys that had worked there, and they could relate stories in terms of their learning so that we could leverage off those learnings. And I think that was pretty key for us, rather than this just being an engagement with a software development house. And then all of the responsibility to have those learnings had to come from our own staff complement, which I think we've always had a very niche focus, and we definitely saw value in that partnership.
So I think then that extends, so not only is IT and business now in partnership, you extend it to beyond your parameters of your organization. And certainly I think that's a role EOH can play, and we thank you for that, and we do hope that the journey is going to be long and happy going forward. I do believe that we're probably going to be out of time. I know that there is lunch, and I think the sessions resume again at 2. For those of you who did join us, I do need to just ask you to fill in your feedback on your app. There is only one opportunity to do it, so I trust maybe you do it at the end of the day. You can then win this really awesome HP. However, you need to be at the cocktail party, no show, no prize. If there are any questions and any of you would like to ask anything of the panel, now's your chance. Anybody with a question? Yes, sir.
The question is, how did you define success in your project?
Okay, I'll probably give you the business version of success, and then maybe Russell can give you the IT version. Both are important. For me, as the business sponsor, success had a couple of dimensions, probably along the lines of a balanced scorecard approach. Financial success is critically important. I wasn't joking when I said I'm from Bidvest, we live and die by our ROFI, so we have to deliver a return. We had to show that the IT enhancements that were delivered would create real business benefit, and I think we certainly have both in the short-term project that Peter's alluded to, plus we're confident that we will do that with EVA, which is the longer-term project. The other one, in fact I probably should have started with this one, is a better customer experience. I mean, what does better mean? Better means, in my life, because I'm a customer too, is quicker processing time, less paper, more user-friendly, more intuitive flows, all of those good things. So that's customer internal and external. And then the other thing was process efficiency. And then the last thing, is also what we started off talking about, was facilitating rapid innovation. The system that we will have will enable us to take enhancements and new customer solutions to market quickly. That was a critical thing for us that we haven't had and that we will have with us. Hope that helps. Russell, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, just from my perspective, I mean, there's a long list of sort of IT things I could tell you about that we had to achieve through the project, but they'll bore you if you are in IT. But there are two main things at the moment that I'm kind of obsessed with. And the first one is I've got to get a platform live, and I've got to try get it as live as close to the original date that we went into, and we got approval on the project. So we are relatively close to the date. We're going through extensive testing. The flight plan is under pressure. So that's like my sole obsession. The other thing that I've got a lot of personal sort of time invested in this project from in terms of what we've promised. And for me, I don't want this project to be seen as a failure just because we may have run 1 or 2 or 3 months behind from a software development perspective. And I guess that's one of the challenges you have in Agile, is that we have had a lot of things thrown at us. There's been a lot of changes, scope changes and things like that. And the executives or the original sort of proposal was always referred to that, guys, you said you'll get it in 2017 on the 1st of May. So if we get it in 3 months later, I'm trying to manage internal sort of expectations with the executive that this is still not a failure. This is a success, that there are many things that could have caused delays. And it's just really, for me, I'll be personally disappointed if we have to sort of judge a project of this magnitude, and that's going to change our organization when it comes down to just 1 or 2 months or 1 or 2 million rand extra additional spend. And that's important to me at the moment.
Just that's a very big change that sort of executives and finance folks have to go through. Is they have to get comfortable with thinking about the world like this. If you can get something that sort of looks like this in about this much time for about that much money, is this a game that you would like to play? And that's what it's all about. Is your organization needs to start realizing that it's okay to say we want to get something sort of like this in about that much time for around that much money, give or take a couple of months, give or take a couple of million. But if we can get something that looks sort of like that, this is a game we're going to play, and we're going to play it hard. And that is when you sort of define, if you think about the military analogy, who the enemy is, and we're going to attack and we're going to invade. And as we're invading, we've got that goal in mind. We want to win, but we are flexible about those 3 parameters in order to achieve the end goal. And what I spend a lot of my time also, helping people with is to say, don't say the 1st of May 2017. And I know it's not always up to you, but you have to convince the people that you're dealing with that it's the 1st of May 2017 plus or minus 10% of whatever the range of this thing is you're trying to do. So anywhere within the 3 to 4 months, if it's a 3-year thing, 6 months basically, is acceptable. Okay? Because if you're trying to think that you can predict like that, it's nonsense. Okay? So you need to start thinking in terms of variances. If we can do something in that variance, and something in that variance, and something in that variance, that is acceptable, and we're going to do it. Then you get great outcomes.
Thank you, Lionel. So I think it's about-ish, that sort of time-ish now. If you'd like to break, go for lunch, enjoy your afternoon, and stay with us. Thank you for your time.